You know, it's actually kind of adorable how they all think we're going to kill each other, Alex said, leaning against the observation window overlooking the diplomatic banquet hall. The stars beyond the space station's transparent ceiling glittered with cold indifference to the political machinations below. Commander Bennett snorted, adjusting his formal Terran Defense Force uniform. Adorable isn't the word I'd use. More like strategically advantageous. The two humans watched as representatives from 17 galactic species mingled nervously below, their movements carefully choreographed to maintain maximum distance between the human delegation and the Kravax contingent on the opposite side of the room. Look at Ambassador Zilthrax, Alex pointed subtly. He's literally standing between us and them with his nerve sacs fully inflated. Poor bastard thinks he's on a suicide mission. To be fair, Bennett replied, the last time humans and Kravax were in the same room, 3 solar systems ended up under quarantine. That was hardly our fault. How were we supposed to know their diplomatic gift was actually their equivalent of a declaration of war? We thought they were giving us flowers. Carnivorous plants that tried to eat the Secretary General aren't flowers, Alex. Semantics. A light chime sounded, signaling 5 minutes until the formal diplomatic reception would begin. The fate of 13 disputed border worlds hung in the balance of tonight's negotiations. The Galactic Concord had spent 3 standard years arranging this meeting between humanity and the Kravax, the 2 most feared species in the known universe. I still don't understand why everyone's so nervous, Alex said, straightening his own formal attire. It's not like we're going to start a war in the middle of a peace conference. Bennett gave him a look that could have melted tritanium. That's exactly what we did at the Proxima Centauri summit. Again, semantics. And technically, the Meraxians fired first. After you called their matriarch a glorified sea cucumber. It was a compliment. Sea cucumbers are fascinating creatures. Bennett pinched the bridge of his nose. This is why they sent me as the military attaché. To prevent exactly this kind of cultural misunderstanding. All right. I'll be on my best behavior. Alex grinned, the expression doing nothing to reassure his commander. Besides, I've been studying Kravax culture extensively. Did you know they consider it a sign of respect to challenge someone to a physical contest? Their entire social hierarchy is based on displays of strength. Yes, I know. Everyone knows. That's why the entire galaxy is terrified about putting humans and Kravax in the same room. 2 apex predator species from Class 13 death worlds with cultures that glorify combat prowess. Bennett checked his chronometer. Just try not to start an interstellar incident in the next 4 hours, okay? My retirement benefits don't kick in for another 6 months. No promises, Alex said cheerfully, pushing away from the window. Let's go make some friends. Grand Exemplar V. Kator of the Kravax Dominion surveyed the pathetic gathering from his vantage point on the upper level of the reception hall. His 4 golden eyes narrowed in contempt as he observed the soft-bodied diplomats from the lesser species scurrying about below, their fierce scent wafting up to him in delicious waves. Disgusting, he rumbled to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Drex. They invite us here to negotiate as equals, yet they tremble at our very presence. Not all of them, Exemplar, Drex noted, his attention fixed on the human delegation that had just entered the main hall. The Terrans show no fear. Vikator followed his subordinate's gaze. The humans moved with confident precision, their strange bilateral symmetry and soft exterior belying the lethal capabilities that had earned them their fearsome reputation. The Kravax had encountered many species across the galaxy, but none that matched their own evolutionary pedigree as apex predators from a high-gravity, high-radiation death world. None except the humans. They are worthy adversaries, Vakator acknowledged, unconsciously flexing his barbed forearms. The chitin plates protecting his vital organs shifted with the movement. It is a shame we must make peace with them. Is that your intention, Exemplar? Drex asked carefully. The High Command seemed ambiguous about our objectives here. Vikator made a harsh sound that passed for laughter among his kind. Politics is merely war by other means, Sub-Commander. And war is merely politics with teeth and claws. He straightened to his full 3-meter height. Come, let us meet these humans who think themselves our equals. As they descended toward the main floor, Vikator noticed how the other diplomats scattered before them, creating a clear path. All except the humans who maintained their positions, watching the Kravax approach with expressions that, even to Vakator's unfamiliar eyes, appeared more curious than fearful. The lead human, a male with dark skin and the rank insignia of a military commander, stepped forward precisely as protocol dictated. Not too eager, not too hesitant. Perfect challenge posture without being overtly aggressive. Interesting, Grand exemplar vocator, the human said in flawless Cravax, complete with the proper subharmonics of respect between warriors. I am Commander Elijah Bennett of the Terran Defense Force. On behalf of Earth and her colonies, I welcome you to this neutral ground and extend the hand of peaceful cooperation. The human extended his right upper limb, palm exposed in what Vocator recognized as their traditional greeting gesture. A clever move, showing that the limb held no weapons while simultaneously demonstrating vulnerability. Among the Kravaks, such a gesture would be either suicidal or an expression of supreme confidence. Vocator suspected it was the latter. He extended his own heavily armored forearm, careful to fold back the venomous barbs, and grasped the human's appendage. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled diplomats. Many had clearly expected violence at first contact. Commander Bennett, Vocator replied in Standard Galactic, his mouthparts struggling with the softer consonants. The Kravak's Dominion acknowledges your greeting and reciprocates your peaceful intentions. The slight pause was deliberate, a test to see if the human would react to the implied uncertainty. Bennett merely nodded, his expression unchanged. Another human stepped forward, this one with lighter coloration and lacking military insignia. Grand exemplar, I'm Alexander Frost, diplomatic liaison. I've studied your culture extensively and must say it's an honor to meet a species whose evolutionary path parallels our own in so many fascinating ways. Vocator tilted his head, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. You find parallels between us, Diplomat Frost? Absolutely. Both our species evolved on hostile worlds that tried to kill us at every turn. Both developed intelligence as an adaptation to overcome environmental challenges rather than avoid them. Both expanded to the stars through a combination of curiosity and territorial imperative. The human smiled, displaying blunt teeth. We're practically cousins, separated by a few 100 million years of convergent evolution. Several nearby diplomats visibly flinched at the human's directness, but Vocator found himself intrigued. Among the Kravaks, such boldness would either be a prelude to challenge or an acknowledgement of kinship. An interesting perspective, Vocator replied. Though I question whether your species truly understands what it means to evolve on a world that hungers for your extinction. The human named Frost laughed, actually laughed, and the sound caused several of the more timid species to back away further. Grand exemplar, with all due respect, Earth makes your homeworld look like a resort destination. We have temperature variations that would shatter your exoskeleton, atmospheric pressure changes that would rupture your breathing sacs, and predators that would consider your chitin a light snack. Subcommander Drex bristled, his dorsal spines elevating in warning. You dare! I dare speak truth between warriors, Frost interrupted, using a Kravak's idiom perfectly. As is proper when strength meets strength. Vocator raised a claw, silencing his subordinate. This human understood their ways better than expected. You speak as one who issues challenge, Diplomat Frost. Not at all, Grand Exemplar. I speak as one who recognizes an equal. There's a difference. For the first time in many cycles, Vocator felt genuine surprise. This soft-skinned creature with no natural armor, no claws, no venom, this objectively fragile being, considered itself his equal? The audacity was either insanity or something worthy of respect. Then, perhaps, Vocator said carefully, these negotiations will be more interesting than I anticipated. From across the room, Ambassador Zilthrax of the Florbian Collective felt his three hearts palpitating in synchronized anxiety as he watched the humans and Kravaks interact. His translucent nerve sacs, evolved to detect minute changes in atmospheric tension, were fully inflated and tingling with alarm. They're going to kill each other, he whispered to his aide. And probably everyone else in this room as collateral damage. The aide, a junior diplomat named Blex, nervously adjusted his atmospheric modifier. Do you think we should activate the emergency evacuation protocols, Ambassador? It's already too late, Zilthrax mourned. The last time representatives of two Class 13 Death World species engaged in formal dialogue, the resulting conflict reduced an entire moon to rubble. That was over 2,000 cycles ago, Blex pointed out. And technically the Scorvians and Zyths were already at war. Details, Zilthrax dismissed with a flutter of his sensory tendrils. The point is, putting humans and Kravaks together is like mixing volatile antimatter with an unstable quantum fluctuation. It's not a question of if, but when. Across the reception hall, the human named Frost said something that made the Grand Exemplar of the Kravaks emit a sound that Zilthrax had never heard before. It took him a moment to recognize it as laughter. Kravaks, laughing, with humans. This is even worse than I feared, Zilthrax muttered. They're bonding. Isn't that good? Blex asked, confusion evident in the rapid color changes across his epidermal surface. No, you naive polychromatophore. Two apex predator species finding common ground is the most terrifying scenario possible. Zilthrax's voice rose an octave in distress. It's like watching two planet-killing asteroid clusters decide to join forces instead of colliding. Belex considered this. I still don't see the balance of power, Blacks. The entire galactic political structure is predicated on humans and Kravaks remaining adversaries who check each other's expansion. If they become allies... Zilthrax's voice trailed off, his imagination supplying horrifying visions of a galaxy dominated by the combined might of Earth and the Kravaks' dominion. Surely the Galactic Concord wouldn't allow. The Concord is a paper shield against species who evolved on worlds where atmospheric discharge regularly sets the very air ablaze, Zilthrax interrupted. We need to act, quickly and decisively. What do you suggest, Ambassador? Zilthrax's gaze darted around the room, assessing potential allies in his hastily conceived plan. We need to ensure these negotiations fail spectacularly, but in a way that neither side blames the other. His primary brain pulsed with sudden inspiration, and I know exactly how to do it. Alex Frost was having the time of his life. When he'd been assigned as diplomatic liaison to the Kravaks negotiations, everyone had warned him about their legendary aggression, their cultural obsession with dominance hierarchies, and their tendency to solve disagreements with ritual combat. No one had mentioned they had a sense of humor drier than Earth's ancient Sahara Desert. So then, he continued, gesturing with his champagne glass, the Admiral says, that's not a navigation buoy. That's the Arcturian ambassador. Grand Exemplar Vicator made that strange rattling sound again, which Alex had come to recognize as laughter. Your species' inability to distinguish between sentient beings and inanimate objects is concerning, Diplomat Frost. In our defense, the Arcturians do look remarkably like glowing orange traffic cones, Commander Bennett added, having relaxed somewhat as the reception progressed without bloodshed. The concept of mistaken identity transcends species boundaries, Subcommander Drex offered unexpectedly. During our first contact with the Mibari, our advanced scout mistook their ceremonial greeting statue for their planetary governor, and spent 3 rotations attempting to negotiate with it. Now it was Alex's turn to laugh. Please tell me you have visual records of this historic diplomatic breakthrough. Unfortunately, all evidence was destroyed in accordance with our dignity preservation protocols, Drex replied. But the slight vibration of his dorsal spine suggested amusement. The small group had formed a surprisingly comfortable conversational circle, though Alex noticed they remained isolated from the rest of the diplomatic gathering. Other species gave them a wide berth, occasionally throwing nervous glances their way. I've been meaning to ask, Alex said, lowering his voice slightly. Is it my imagination, or is everyone else here terrified of us? Vicator's 4 golden eyes swiveled to survey the room. Not imagination. Fear. They fear what might happen when Deathworlders meet. But surely they understand that we're all professional diplomats here. No one's going to start an interstellar incident over appetizers and small talk. Bennett coughed pointedly. Proxima Centauri, Alex. Again with that. It was one time, and the Meraxian matriarch started it by suggesting humans were descended from prey animals. Vicator's head tilted in that now familiar expression of interest. Were you not? Alex grinned. Technically, our distant ancestors were small, rodent-like creatures that scurried between the feet of giant reptiles. But we evolved beyond that rather effectively, wouldn't you say? Evolution rewards adaptation, Vicator agreed. The Kravaks began as burrowing ambush predators beneath the toxic sands of Vacatoria. Now we stride among the stars. To adaptation, then, Alex raised his glass, and to finding common ground between worlds that tried their damnedest to kill us. The Kravaks raised their own drinking vessels, specially designed to accommodate their complex mouth parts in what Alex recognized as a gesture of significant cultural importance. Among the Kravaks, sharing sustenance was reserved for trusted allies or family clutchmates. As they completed the ritual toast, Alex noticed Ambassador Zilthrax approaching their group with an expression that, even on his alien features, radiated forced casualness. The Florbian was accompanied by representatives from 3 other species, all looking equally uncomfortable. Grand Exemplar, Commander Bennett. How fortunate to find you both engaged in such amicable discussion. Zilthrax's translator rendered his high-pitched vocalizations into standard galactic. The Florbian Collective wishes to present a minor proposal regarding the disputed territories before formal negotiations begin tomorrow. Bennett raised an eyebrow. This is unusual protocol, Ambassador. Preliminary proposals should be submitted through the proper channels. A mere formality. Zilthrax waved a sensory tendril dismissively. A gesture of goodwill to facilitate tomorrow's more substantive discussions. Alex noticed the Kravax had gone very still, a sign he recognized from his cultural studies as heightened alertness. Vikator's golden eyes had narrowed to slits. The Dominion acknowledges your enthusiasm, Ambassador, Vikator said carefully. However, as the human commander indicates, proper protocols exist for a reason. Of course. Zilthrax's nerve sacs pulsated rapidly, a sign of agitation that his forced diplomatic demeanor couldn't hide. But considering the historical significance of this meeting between your two formidable species, surely some flexibility is warranted. Alex exchanged a quick glance with Bennett. Something wasn't right here. What exactly is this proposal, Ambassador? Alex asked, keeping his tone light but watching the Florbian carefully. Zilthrax produced a data crystal from a fold in his environmental suit. A simple suggestion for resource allocation across the 13 disputed worlds. Nothing revolutionary, I assure you. If both your delegations would review it together here and now, it would demonstrate to the conquered your mutual commitment to peaceful resolution. Bennett frowned. That crystal isn't in a standard diplomatic housing. Has it been security cleared by station protocols? A minor oversight in our haste to facilitate cooperation. Zilthrax's color shifted slightly toward the ultraviolet spectrum, a change that would be invisible to most species, but that Alex's enhanced diplomatic implants detected as a stress response. Vikator made a subtle gesture to Subcommander Drex, who moved slightly to block the Florbian's path toward their group. The Kravax Dominion does not accept unsecured data transfers, Ambassador. This is known. Nor does Earth, Bennett added, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly toward a defensive stance. If you have a proposal, submit it through proper channels with appropriate security verification. Zilthrax's nerve sacs fully inflated in what appeared to be panic. But this is merely a gesture of, you don't understand the importance. Alex stepped forward, smiling diplomatically but positioning himself directly in front of the Florbian. Ambassador Zilthrax, is there something specific you're trying to accomplish here? Because it seems to me like you're attempting to circumvent standard diplomatic protocols, which makes both our delegations curious about your motivations. The Florbian's 3 hearts were now visibly pulsating beneath his translucent epidermis. The other diplomats who had accompanied him began to back away slowly. That is, Zilthrax stammered. Perhaps, Vakator suggested, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. The ambassador would prefer to discuss his true intentions privately. It was remarkable, Alex thought, how a simple statement could sound so much like a death threat when delivered in that particular tone. Zilthrax apparently thought so too, because his nerve sac suddenly deflated with a high-pitched whine as he backed away. No need for private discussions. A misunderstanding, clearly. We'll submit through proper channels. Immediately. Good evening. The Florbian ambassador retreated with impressive speed for a being with no proper legs, his companions scattering in different directions. Well, Alex said into the silence that followed. That was interesting. Bennett's expression had hardened into what Alex recognized as his combat assessment mode. That data crystal was not standard diplomatic issue. No, Vikator agreed. It contained non-regulation components, potential security hazard. Alex blinked. Wait, you could tell that just by looking at it? Kravak's vision extends into spectrums your species cannot perceive, Vakator explained. The crystal's internal structure was inconsistent with its stated purpose. So Ambassador Nervous System was just trying to, what? Slip us both some kind of malware? To what end? Alex wondered aloud. Subcommander Drex rejoined their circle, having followed the retreating Florbian briefly. He has joined a gathering of representatives from the Mabari Protectorate, the Zoltan Cooperative, and the Tellarite Union. They appear distressed by his return. Bennett's expression darkened further. Those are all members of the Central Galactic Alliance, historically neutral in conflicts between Earth and the Dominion. But who would benefit if these negotiations failed? Alex realized, the pieces falling into place, especially if they failed in a way that heightened tensions between humans and Kravax. Victor's golden eyes swept the room again, this time with predatory focus. Many species fear what might emerge if our two powers found common cause rather than conflict. They'd rather keep us at each other's throats than risk us working together, Bennett concluded. Classic divide and conquer strategy. Alex felt a slow smile spread across his face. Well, in that case, I think we should give them something to really worry about. Ambassador Zilthrax huddled with his co-conspirators in a corner of the reception hall, his nerve sacs deflated in defeat. They knew, he hissed to the Tellarite representative. Somehow they knew. Your approach lacked subtlety, the Tellarite replied, their metal alloy exoskeleton clicking with agitation. The data crystal's electromagnetic disruptor would have temporarily disabled their translation systems, creating confusion and mutual suspicion. It was our best option on short notice, Zilthrax defended. And now they're suspicious of our intentions. Deathworlders are always suspicious, the Mibari delegate interjected, her crystalline features refracting the ambient light. It's a survival adaptation from their nightmare planets. The question is, what do we do now? Asked the Zoltan representative, nervously fidgeting with their ceremonial rank insignia. If humans and Kravax actually reach a peaceful settlement for the disputed territories, then the Central Galactic Alliance will be caught between two expanding powers with a newfound respect for each other, Zilthrax finished glumly. Our strategic relevance as neutral intermediaries will evaporate. Not to mention the economic implications, added the Tellarite. Our trade routes through the disputed sectors are profitable precisely because neither humans nor Kravax can establish direct commercial links. The Mibari's crystalline form vibrated in distress. Perhaps we should consult with the other Alliance members before... Her statement cut off abruptly as she noticed something across the room. The other conspirators followed her gaze. Grand Exemplar VK and Commander Bennett stood side by side at the central podium, the universal signal for an unscheduled announcement. The human diplomat, Frost, stood slightly behind them, wearing an expression that even Zilthrax, with his limited understanding of human facial configurations, could interpret as smugly satisfied. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Concord, Victor's amplified voice silenced the ambient conversation. The Kravax Dominion wishes to make an announcement regarding our negotiations with the Terran Alliance. Bennett stepped forward. In the spirit of transparency and cooperation, we feel it is important to inform the Concord of a significant diplomatic development. Zilthrax felt his primary heart skip a beat. The human and the Kravax were taking turns speaking, a symbolic gesture of unity that sent murmurs rippling through the assembled diplomats. After preliminary discussions, Vikator continued, we have discovered areas of mutual interest that extend beyond the disputed territories. Our species share more common ground than previously acknowledged, Bennett added, both in terms of our evolutionary heritage and our vision for galactic stability. Zilthrax's worst fears were materializing before his eyes. He clutched the nearest support pillar as his equilibrium sacs threatened to collapse. Therefore, Vikator announced, his barbed forearms raised in a traditional Kravax gesture of significance, the Dominion proposes an immediate cessation of all territorial disputes with the Terran Alliance. In return, Bennett continued seamlessly, Earth offers a comprehensive technology exchange program and mutual defense pact covering all 13 disputed worlds. The reception hall erupted in shocked exclamations. Several diplomats from smaller species appeared on the verge of fainting. A Zendarax representative actually did faint, their gelatinous form puddling dramatically on the polished floor. Furthermore, Vikator's voice cut through the chaos. We propose the establishment of a joint human Kravax administrative zone across the disputed sectors, with open access to all conquered species who wish to trade peacefully. Under the protection of combined human and Kravax security forces, of course, Bennett added with what appeared to be a deliberately ominous smile. Zilthrax felt his nerve sacs involuntarily inflate to their maximum capacity as pure terror flooded his system. They're forming an alliance, he whispered hoarsely. The two most militarily powerful, evolutionarily aggressive species in known space are forming an alliance. The Tellarite's exoskeleton rattled in distress. This is unprecedented. This is catastrophic, the Mibari corrected, her crystalline structure emitting stress harmonics audible only to certain species. On the podium, the human diplomat Frost had stepped forward to join his companions. To symbolize this new era of cooperation, Frost announced cheerfully, Grand Exemplar VK and Commander Bennett will now participate in a traditional ceremony combining elements of both our cultures. What happened next would be recorded in diplomatic archives across the galaxy and referenced in xenopolitical studies for generations to come. The human commander and the Kravax Exemplar faced each other, then simultaneously drew ceremonial weapons, a Terran officer's dress blade and a Kravax ritual claw extension. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly, several diplomats diving for cover behind furniture or other attendees. But instead of attacking each other, the two Deathworlders crossed their weapons in what was unmistakably a gesture of alliance, not combat. Then, in perfect synchronization, they turned to face the crowd, weapons still extended, but now pointed outward, toward the assembled representatives of the Galactic Concord. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd spelled it out in atmospheric trace particles. We stand together now. Proceed accordingly. Zilthrax felt his tertiary heart give out entirely. 3 hours later, Alex collapsed into a chair in the private suite assigned to the Earth delegation, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Did you see Zilthrax's face?" he gasped between fits of laughter. "I thought his nerve sacs were going to explode." Bennett, more composed, but clearly amused, poured himself a drink from the suite's refreshment station. "I'm more impressed by the Zendirax delegate literally melting into a puddle of terror." "A diplomatic masterpiece," Alex declared, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. "The synchronized weapon draw was inspired, by the way. Whose idea was that?" "Vikator's, surprisingly. He has a flair for the dramatic that rivals your own." The door chimed, and Bennett checked the security monitor before authorizing entry. Grand Exemplar Vikator and Subcommander Drex entered, ducking slightly to accommodate their towering frames. "Our performance appears to have had the desired effect," Vikator announced without preamble. "The Central Galactic Alliance representatives have been in continuous emergency session for the past 2 hours." Alex raised his glass in salute. "To successful psychological warfare." "Indeed." Vakator settled his massive form carefully onto a reinforced chair designed for species of his size. "Though I question how long we can maintain this charade. It doesn't need to last forever," Bennett pointed out. "Just long enough to force the Alliance into revealing their true agenda regarding the disputed territories." Drex, who had remained standing, emitted a sound that might have been skepticism. "You assume they will panic and overreact." "Have you met diplomats?" Alex asked rhetorically. "Overreaction is practically a job requirement." Vikator made that now familiar rattling laugh. "The human speaks truth. Already my intelligence officers report increased communications between Alliance members and their respective militaries." "Same here," Bennett confirmed. "They're positioning assets near the disputed sectors, probably as a show of force to counter our supposed new alliance." Alex leaned forward, his amusement fading into more serious consideration. "The irony is, this fake alliance might actually make more sense than continuing our territorial disputes. We've spent decades fighting over these border worlds when neither of us actually wants to govern them." "Elaborate," Vakator commanded, but his tone held genuine interest rather than hostility. "Earth wants the transit routes and mining rights, but we don't particularly care about establishing colonies. The Kravax want security buffers and military access, but not the administrative headache of planetary governance." Alex shrugged. "Our interests are complementary, not contradictory." Bennett looked thoughtful. "He's not wrong. Our strategic analyses have suggested similar conclusions, but political momentum has kept us on a confrontational path." "The Dominion Council has similar assessments," Victor admitted reluctantly. "But tradition demands strength, not compromise." But there's strength in alliance," Alex countered. "Especially when it terrifies everyone else into giving you what you want." A moment of silence followed as the 4 occupants of the room considered the implications. "Are you suggesting," Drex finally spoke, "that we transform our theatrical alliance into an actual diplomatic arrangement?" "I'm suggesting we consider whether our species' mutual reputation as aggressive Deathworlders might be leveraged for mutual benefit," Alex clarified. "Fear can be a powerful diplomatic tool when applied correctly." Vikator's golden eyes studied Alex with new intensity. "You think like a Kravax, Diplomat Frost?" "Highest compliment I've received all day," Alex grinned. "Look, I'm not proposing we actually threaten the rest of the Concord, but if they're already afraid of what might happen if humans and Kravax work together, why not use that to negotiate more favorable terms for both our species?" Bennett set his glass down decisively. "It has strategic merit. A coordinated approach would force concessions that neither of us could achieve independently. And if the Alliance is indeed attempting to keep us in conflict for their own benefit," Vakator added, "this would, how do humans phrase it? Give them a taste of their own medicine," Alex supplied. "An odd idiom, but appropriate." The door chimed again. This time the security monitor showed Ambassador Zilthrax, his nerve sacs fully inflated in what appeared to be maximum diplomatic distress. "Right on cue," Alex murmured. Bennett looked to Vakator. "Shall we continue our performance?" The Grand Exemplar's mouthparts arranged themselves into the Kravax equivalent of a predatory smile. "With pleasure, Commander." As Bennett authorized entry, Alex couldn't help feeling that this diplomatic mission had taken a turn none of the strategic planners back on Earth could have anticipated. Two apex predator species from Class 13 death worlds, united not in violence but in the sophisticated application of intimidation? The galaxy really wasn't ready for that. The official signing ceremony for the Human Cravax Cooperative Agreement took place 3 days later in the station's Grand Assembly Hall. Representatives from every major galactic power attended, their collective anxiety creating an atmosphere so tense that several species with empathic abilities had to wear dampening devices to avoid sensory overload. Ambassador Zilthrax, serving as reluctant moderator in his capacity as senior Concord diplomat, looked like he had aged several molt cycles in the past 72 hours. His normally vibrant coloration had faded to a sickly translucent gray, and his voice quavered as he called the session to order. Esteemed delegates, we convene today to witness the formal ratification of the unexpected agreement between the Terran Alliance and the Cravax Dominion. His nerve sacs pulsated weakly with each word. Before the signing commences, the floor is open for final statements from concerned parties. The Tellarite representative immediately activated their speaking priority. The Central Galactic Alliance formally protests this unprecedented consolidation of military power. The combined forces of Earth and the Dominion would create an imbalance that threatens the security of all non-Death World species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Commander Bennett, seated at the signing table beside Grand Exemplar Vicator, leaned forward to his microphone. The Tellarite Confederation's concerns would carry more weight had they not attempted to sabotage our negotiations through electronic warfare. Shocked gasps and hurried whispers filled the chamber. A baseless accusation, the Tellarite protested, their exoskeleton rattling in agitation. Vicator's voice cut through the noise like a plasma cutter through hull plating. The Cravax Dominion possesses sensor logs confirming unauthorized transmission patterns consistent with disruptor technology, originating from the Central Alliance diplomatic quarter. Alex, standing behind Bennett in his role as diplomatic liaison, smiled innocently. We have comprehensive evidence of coordination between multiple Alliance members to ensure these negotiations failed catastrophically. Evidence we're prepared to present to the full Galactic Concord. The assembly erupted into chaos. Several smaller species representatives began shouting accusations at the Alliance members, while others demanded to see the evidence immediately. Zilthrax's nerve sacs deflated completely as he desperately pounded his ceremonial gavel for order. Silence! The thunderous command came not from Zilthrax, but from Vicator, who had risen to his full imposing height. The room instantly quieted, evolutionary instinct responding to the apex predator's dominance display. The purpose of this gathering is not to assign blame, Vicator continued in a more measured tone, but to announce a new era of cooperation that benefits all species. Bennett nodded, rising to stand beside his Cravax counterpart. Contrary to apparent concerns, our agreement does not constitute a military alliance aimed at intimidating the conquered. Rather, it establishes a jointly administered neutral zone in the disputed territories, with guaranteed access for all peaceful trading vessels regardless of origin. Alex stepped forward, activating the holographic display embedded in the center of the assembly hall. A three-dimensional map of the 13 disputed worlds appeared, with transit routes and resource deposits clearly marked. As you can see, Alex explained, gesturing to specific highlighted sectors, the cooperative agreement creates dedicated trade corridors through what was previously contested space. Transit taxes will be standardized at rates 15% below current Concord averages, with security provided by joint human Cravax patrols. The assembly hall had gone eerily quiet as delegates processed this unexpected information. The Mabari representative was the first to recover enough to speak. These terms, they're actually favorable to medium-power trading nations. Her crystalline form vibrated in confusion. I don't understand. We expected punitive conditions. Why? Bennett asked simply. Neither Earth nor the Dominion benefits from economic instability in the region. But you're Deathworlders, the Zoltan delegate blurted out, then immediately looked mortified at his own outburst. Alex couldn't suppress a laugh. And that automatically means we want to conquer and destroy everything? Come on! Even apex predators understand the value of a stable ecosystem. Indeed, Vicator agreed. The true threat to galactic stability was not our territorial dispute, but the efforts of certain parties to prolong and intensify it for their own economic advantage. All eyes in the assembly turned toward the Central Alliance representatives, who suddenly found great interest in studying their various appendages or data tablets. Zilthrax, sensing an opportunity to salvage the situation, cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we should proceed directly to the signing ceremony. The terms of the agreement have been distributed to all delegations for review. Bennett and Vicator returned to their seats at the signing table. A diplomatic aide presented the formal agreement, an actual physical document, as both human and Kravak's traditions valued tangible records for matters of historical significance. "Before we sign," Bennett said, "I want to be absolutely clear about one crucial aspect of this agreement." He looked directly at the Central Alliance delegation. "Any attempt to undermine the cooperative zone, through either military or economic means, will be considered an act of aggression against both Earth and the Kravak's dominion simultaneously." Vector's golden eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. "And we will respond, appropriately." The implied threat hung in the air like an armed plasma charge. Every being in the room understood exactly what it meant when two Deathworld species promised a coordinated response to provocation. Without further ceremony, Bennett and Vicator signed the document, their synchronized movements emphasizing the unexpected harmony between their traditionally opposed powers. As Zilthrax hurriedly declared the session complete, delegates rushed to form conversational clusters, the political landscape of the galaxy visibly realigning before Alex's eyes. He caught Bennett's subtle nod of approval as they moved to join Vicator and Drex for the obligatory post-signing reception. "Congratulations, Diplomat Frost," Vicator rumbled as Alex approached. "Your strategy proved effective." "Our strategy," Alex corrected with a smile. "I just suggested we leverage everyone's existing prejudices about Deathworlders. The actual diplomatic framework was a collaborative masterpiece." Bennett glanced around at the still-stunned assembly. "I'll admit, I never expected my final diplomatic mission before retirement to end with an actual peace agreement. The odds were astronomical." "Speaking of astronomical," Alex said, lowering his voice, "what are the chances we can maintain this cooperative approach long-term? Earth's political landscape is volatile, as is the Dominion Council," Vicator acknowledged. "But self-interest is a powerful motivator. The economic benefits of this arrangement will become apparent within one standard cycle. And by then," Drex added with unexpected political insight, "too many influential entities will be invested in its continuation to allow a return to conflict." "Peace through pragmatism," Bennett mused. "Not exactly the noble ideal they teach at the Diplomatic Academy." Alex shrugged. "Hey, if everyone thinks we're terrifying Deathworld monsters just waiting for an excuse to unleash havoc, we might as well use it to create some stability." Vicator made his rattling laugh. "As we say on Vicatoria, when hunting the toxic sand dweller, use its own venom." "We have a similar saying on Earth," Alex replied. "Fight fire with fire." "Your planet allows fire to exist in its natural atmosphere?" Drex asked, sounding genuinely horrified. "Truly, Earth must be even more lethal than our intelligence suggested." Bennett and Alex exchanged amused glances. "You have no idea," Bennett said dryly. 6 months later, Alex stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Cooperative Administration Station, orbiting Nexus Prime, the central world of the former disputed territories. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he could see vessels from a dozen different species docked at the sprawling complex, commerce flowing with an efficiency that the region had never before experienced. "Admiring your handiwork?" a familiar voice asked. Alex turned to see Commander, now Admiral, Bennett approaching, his uniform displaying the new insignia that incorporated elements of both human and Kravak's design, symbolizing his role as co-administrator of the cooperative zone. "Just thinking about how spectacularly wrong everyone was about putting Deathworlders together," Alex replied. 6 months, not a single armed confrontation, trade up 300%, and the Central Alliance practically falling over themselves to maintain favorable relations. Bennett joined him at the viewport. "Fear is a powerful motivator." "So is profit," Alex added. "Turns out most species care more about economic stability than they do about evolutionary psychology." "Most of the time," Bennett qualified. "Though I still wouldn't recommend scheduling the Tellarites and the Mibari for consecutive docking slots. That dispute over crystalline mining rights nearly turned ugly last week. Nothing too intimidating Deathworlders couldn't handle, I'm sure." Bennett snorted. Vicator just stood there looking menacing while I explained the infrastructure improvements both their worlds would receive if they reached a compromise. Carrot and stick, classic diplomacy. "Speaking of our favorite four-eyed killing machine, how's he adapting to cooperative governance?" Alex asked. Vicator had taken the counterpart administrative position on behalf of the Dominion, much to the surprise of many who had considered him a traditionalist hardliner. "Better than expected. Turns out the Kravaks respect efficiency above almost everything else." When he reported the first quarter's resource yields to the Dominion Council, Apparently, even his most vocal critics went silent. A soft chime from Bennett's communicator interrupted their conversation. He checked the device and grimaced slightly. "Problem?" Alex asked. "Potentially. Long-range sensors have detected unusual activity near the core ward boundary. Multiple vessels with masked identification signatures." Alex frowned. "Pirates?" "Unlikely. Pattern suggests military formation, not raider tactics." Bennett was already moving toward the command center, Alex falling into step beside him. When they arrived, the control room was a hive of coordinated activity, human and Kravax personnel working side by side with an efficiency that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. Sub-Commander Drex, now serving as Chief of Security Operations, stood at the central monitoring station. "Report," Bennett ordered concisely. Drex manipulated the holographic display, expanding the sensor readings. 17 vessels. Formation consistent with Zenderak's battle doctrine. They are maintaining position just outside cooperative jurisdiction. The Zenderak's hegemony? Alex was surprised. They're not even part of the Central Alliance. What's their stake in this? Unknown, Drex replied. However, intelligence suggests they recently concluded a resource exchange agreement with the Tellarites. Bennett's expression hardened. And the Tellarites are still unhappy about the new crystalline mineral distribution protocols. A proxy confrontation, Alex realized. The Alliance using the Zenderaks to test our resolve without directly involving themselves. Classic strategy, Bennett agreed. Has Grand Exemplar V. Kator been notified? He's en route from the Kravax administrative complex, Drex confirmed. Estimated arrival in 7 minutes. Alex studied the tactical display, an idea forming. You know, if they're expecting the stereotypical Death Worlder response, immediate military escalation, we could use that expectation against them. Bennett raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. What's the absolute last thing they'd expect from 2 apex predator species confronted with a military provocation? A slow smile spread across Bennett's face. An invitation. Fleet Commander Jeeks Toll of the Zenderak's hegemony was not a being accustomed to confusion. The gelatinous composition of his species enabled complex, multi-directional thought processes that most solid-form entities could only dream of achieving. Yet as he absorbed the message being transmitted from the Cooperative Administration Station, confusion was indeed the primary state of his neural network. They wish us to visit. His translator struggled to convert his rippling biochemical signals into vocal equivalent. Not merely visit, exalted fluidity, his communications officer replied, equally perplexed. They have invited the entire battle group to dock for what they term a cultural exchange and trade opportunity discussion. GX Toll's outer membrane pulsated with skepticism. This is obviously a trap. The Human Kravax Alliance has detected our approach and seeks to lure us into weapons range. That would be the logical conclusion, exalted fluidity, except... The officer's translucent form shimmered with hesitation. Except? They have deactivated their defensive grid and opened their central docking bay. Long-range scans confirm their weapon systems are in standby mode. Jex Toll's primary consciousness node pulsed rapidly as he processed this unexpected development. The Tellarite Confederation had commissioned this show of force with very specific parameters. Approach the boundary, demonstrate military capability, retreat if challenged directly. A simple intimidation exercise to remind the newly formed cooperative zone that the Central Alliance still possessed significant influence. No one had prepared contingency protocols for an invitation to tea, or whatever bizarre ritual these Deathworlders had in mind. It must be a deception, Jex Toll insisted, though uncertainty rippled through his cellular structure. Deathworld species respond to threats with immediate aggression. This is documented across multiple xenobiological studies. The tactical officer's form undulated in what translated as a tentative gesture. Perhaps, exalted fluidity. But our historical records indicate limited direct interaction with either humans or Kravax. Most behavioral analyses are theoretical, based on evolutionary modeling rather than observed diplomatic exchanges. GX Toll absorbed this perspective, allowing it to permeate his decision-making processes. The Zenderaks had indeed maintained distance from both species, considering them unpredictably dangerous. This mission itself had been accepted only because the Tellarite compensation package included rare biochemical compounds essential to the next-generational spawning cycle. Transmit a response, he finally decided. Inform them that I will personally attend their exchange with a security detail. The fleet will maintain position. As his officers hurried to comply, Jex Toll allowed a ripple of anticipation to flow through his cellular matrix. Perhaps there was valuable intelligence to be gained from direct observation of these notorious Deathworlders. At minimum, it would make for an interesting report to the Tellarites. assuming he survived the encounter. Alex watched through the one-way observation panel as the Zendarax delegation oozed its way through the decontamination chamber. The amorphous beings had to be contained within specially designed environmental suits to prevent their naturally acidic biochemistry from damaging the station's surfaces. "Remind me again why this was a good idea," Bennett muttered beside him. "Because they expected us to either attack or threaten," Alex replied. "By inviting them aboard, we've completely disrupted their psychological framework for this encounter. They'll be off balance, uncertain, and potentially dangerous," Vacator interjected, joining them at the observation panel. The Grand Exemplar's massive form cast a shadow over both humans. Zendarax biochemistry is classified as a biological weapon on 17 worlds. Hence the triple-sealed environmental suits and the decontamination protocols, Alex pointed out. Besides, their physical vulnerability balances the equation. One breach in those suits and they'd dissolve faster than diplomatic relations after a cultural faux pas. Bennett sighed. "Your metaphors get worse under pressure, you know that? It's part of my charm." The indicator lights on the decontamination chamber switched from amber to green, signaling the completion of the safety protocols. Bennett straightened his uniform. "Let's get this over with." The three of them proceeded to the diplomatic reception room, specially prepared for the occasion. Most standard furniture had been removed to accommodate the Zendarax's unique physical requirements, replaced with adaptive support platforms that would prevent their environmental suits from destabilizing. The delegation oozed through the doorway with what Alex interpreted as cautious dignity. Fleet Commander Jex Toll's environmental suit was more elaborately designed than his subordinates, with integrated technology that presumably enhanced his sensory capabilities. "Fleet Commander," Bennett greeted formally. "Welcome to Cooperative Administration Station Nexus. I am Admiral Elijah Bennett, Earth's administrative representative. And I am Grand Exemplar Vacator of the Cravax Dominion," Vacator added, his posture deliberately non-threatening despite his imposing physical presence. "This is Alexander Frost, our diplomatic liaison." Bennett completed the introductions. The Zendarax commander's form rippled within his containment suit, the translator embedded in his environment system converting the biochemical signals into audible speech. "I am Fleet Commander Jex Toll of the Zendarax Hegemony. Your invitation was unexpected. Yet you accepted it," Alex observed with a diplomatic smile. "Which suggests an open mind, a quality the cooperative zone values highly in potential trading partners." The Zendarax's translucent form pulsated in what might have been surprise. "Trading partners? You misunderstand our presence. This is a routine patrol of neighboring sectors." "Of course," Bennett agreed smoothly. "Just as we routinely prepare detailed proposals for biochemical exchange programs specifically calibrated to Zendarax physiological requirements." He gestured to a data display that activated at his movement, showing molecular structures that caused an immediate ripple of reaction through the Zendarax delegation. "Those are..." Jex Toll's translator struggled momentarily. "Spawning catalyst compounds, extremely rare. Byproducts of our new mining operations on Nexus 4, Vacator explained. Of limited use to either humans or Cravax, but our research suggested significant value to your species." Alex watched with carefully concealed amusement as the Zendarax commander's form undulated in what was clearly internal conflict. The hegemony had been commissioned by the Tellarites to perform a show of force, not negotiate a trade agreement, especially not one involving compounds vital to their reproductive cycle. "Perhaps," Alex suggested innocently, "your patrol could include an extended stop at our biochemical processing facility. A first-hand inspection of the extraction procedures might help determine whether these resources are of interest to the hegemony." GX Toll's environmental suit emitted a series of subtle vibrations as he communicated privately with his subordinates. After a moment, his translator activated again. "Such an inspection would be informative. However, I must be clear that I lack authority to negotiate formal trade agreements without consultation with the Hegemony Council." "Of course," Bennett nodded understandingly. "This would merely be a preliminary discussion of potential opportunities, a gesture of neighborly cooperation." "Speaking of neighbors," Alex added casually, "we understand the Tellarite Confederation has recently established closer ties with the Hegemony. They're valued trading partners within the cooperative zone as well." The Zendarax commander's form went momentarily still, the equivalent, Alex guessed, of being caught off guard. "Our relationship with the Tellarites is not relevant to this discussion," Jex Toll responded after a noticeable pause. Vacator's golden eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence. "On the contrary, interconnected diplomatic relationships strengthen regional stability. The cooperative zone encourages such connections, provided they're pursued with transparent intentions." The implied message couldn't have been clearer. We know exactly who sent you and why. Another series of vibrations emanated from the Zendarak's commander's suit as he conferred with his officers. When he spoke again, his translator rendered a tone that seemed almost resigned. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding regarding the purpose of our patrol. The hegemony maintains interest in regional security and economic stability. If the cooperative zone is pursuing similar objectives, mutual discussion could be beneficial. Bennett smiled diplomatically. I couldn't agree more, Commander. Shall we proceed to the biochemical facility for that preliminary inspection? Our chief science officer can provide a detailed overview of the extraction process. As the Zendarak's delegation followed Bennett from the reception room, Alex fell into step beside Vikator. That went even better than expected, he murmured. They completely abandoned the intimidation approach. Self-interest trumps loyalty to allies, Vikator observed. A principle consistent across species, especially when the self-interest involves compounds essential for reproduction. Nothing motivates quite like the survival of one's genetic line. Vikator made his now familiar rattling laugh. You understand predatory instinct well for a species with such inadequate natural defenses. We compensate with psychological insight and a willingness to exploit it shamelessly, Alex replied cheerfully. A formidable adaptation, Vikator acknowledged. Perhaps more effective than barbed limbs and armored exoskeletons in this era of interstellar diplomacy. Don't sell yourself short. Your intimidation factor definitely helped seal the deal back there. The commander's environmental suit practically vibrated with stress when you mentioned transparent intentions. Complementary evolutionary advantages, Vikator concluded. Perhaps this is why our alliance functions more effectively than the Conquered anticipated. Alex considered this as they walked. The galaxy had expected chaos when humans and Kravax formed their unexpected partnership, a catastrophic clash of Deathworld titans that would leave devastation in its wake. Instead, they'd created the most stable economic zone in the sector, neutralized external threats without firing a shot, and were now apparently on the verge of turning a potential enemy into a trading partner, all by strategically leveraging the very reputation that had made everyone fear their cooperation in the first place. You know what the real irony is? Alex said as they reached the science section. Everyone was so afraid of what would happen if Deathworlders united that they never considered we might actually be good at peaceful cooperation, exactly because of our evolutionary background. Explain, Vikator prompted, genuinely interested. Species from benign worlds never had to develop complex cooperative strategies to survive. Their environments were forgiving enough that basic social structures sufficed. Alex gestured expansively. But on a death world, cooperation isn't just beneficial, it's essential. The most successful predators are often those who form the most effective groups. Vikator considered this, his golden eyes thoughtful. The Kravax evolved from solitary hunters, yet our civilization advanced most rapidly when clutch groups began forming cooperative hunting bands. Exactly. Earth's apex predators, wolves, lions, orcas, humans, all developed sophisticated social structures and communication systems. It's not despite being predators that we're good at cooperation, it's because of it. The grand irony of the situation struck Alex anew. The galaxy had been terrified of Deathworlders uniting because they assumed it would amplify their aggressive tendencies. No one had considered that it might instead harness their equally evolved cooperative capabilities, the very adaptations that had allowed them to survive their hellish homeworlds in the first place. Ahead of them, the Zendarak's delegation had stopped at the entrance to the biochemical facility, their amorphous forms rippling with what appeared to be excitement as Bennett explained the extraction process for the spawning catalysts. What had begun as an intimidation mission was rapidly transforming into the foundation for a new trading relationship. Not a bad outcome for a day's work, Alex thought. Especially for a couple of terrifying Deathworld monsters. One standard year after the formation of the cooperative zone, representatives from 27 species gathered at the Central Administrative Station for the official anniversary commemoration. The event was being broadcast across the galactic Concord, a public relations exercise designed to showcase the unexpected success of the human-Kravax partnership. Ambassador Zil Thrax, whose initial terror had gradually transformed into reluctant admiration, had been selected to deliver the official Concord address. His nerve sacs, once deflated in defeat, now pulsated with professional confidence as he approached the podium. Esteemed delegates, honored guests, citizens of the galaxy, he began, his translator rendering his high-pitched vocalizations into standard galactic with diplomatic flourish. One cycle ago, many of us gathered with trepidation to witness what we feared would be a catastrophic alliance between two of the most formidable species known to the Concord. Diplomatic murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. No one could deny the accuracy of his statement. The conventional wisdom was clear, Zilthrax continued. Deathworld species, evolved under conditions of extreme environmental pressure, naturally tend toward aggression, territorial expansion, and conflict. When two such species form an alliance, the result should logically be amplified aggression, a combined force of nature as destructive as the worlds that shaped them. From his position near the back of the assembly hall, Alex exchanged amused glances with Bennett. Both were dressed in formal diplomatic attire, representing Earth at this ceremonial occasion. Across the room, Vikator and Drex stood similarly attired in Kravak's formal regalia. How spectacularly wrong we were, Zilthrax declared with surprising candor. The cooperative zone has established the most stable economic framework in recent galactic history. Trade volume has increased by 417%. Piracy has decreased by 89%. 17 previously unresolved territorial disputes have been peacefully settled through the zone's innovative mediation protocols. The ambassador's nerve sacs expanded with emphasis. In short, the human-Kravak's partnership has created stability where we expected chaos, prosperity where we feared destruction, and peace where we anticipated war. The assembly hall erupted in appreciative vocalizations from a dozen different species, each expressing approval according to their biological capabilities. The Zendarax delegation's environmental suits vibrated in their equivalent of applause. Unsurprisingly, since their trade agreement for spawning catalysts had been formalized 3 months earlier, to the considerable discomfort of their former Tellarite patrons. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the cooperative zone, Zilthrax concluded, is that our understanding of evolutionary psychology across species remains woefully incomplete. We assumed that the traits which make Deathworld species formidable, strategic thinking, resource efficiency, adaptive problem-solving, and yes, the capacity for coordinated violence when necessary, would inevitably lead to conflict when combined. Instead, these same traits, when directed toward mutual benefit, have created unprecedented cooperation. As the ambassador completed his address to enthusiastic approval, Alex made his way through the crowd toward Bennett, who was deep in conversation with a Mibari trade representative. Quite the turnaround from last year, Alex commented when the Mibari had moved on. Remember when Zilthrax was convinced we were going to destroy civilization as he knew it? Bennett smiled dryly. Amazing what a 400% increase in trade revenue can do for interspecies relations. Speaking of relations, Alex nodded toward the entrance, where a new delegation had just arrived. Looks like the Central Alliance finally decided to make an appearance. The Tellarite representative led the small group, their metal alloy exoskeleton polished to ceremonial brilliance. They approached Bennett and Alex with what appeared to be carefully constructed casualness. Admiral Bennett, Diplomat Frost, the Tellarite greeted them. The Central Alliance extends congratulations on this significant milestone. How generous, Alex replied with a diplomatic smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Especially considering your efforts to ensure this milestone never occurred. The Tellarite's exoskeleton clicked in what might have been embarrassment. Past misunderstandings are best left in the past, don't you agree? The Alliance has recently re-evaluated its strategic priorities in this sector. Convenient timing, Bennett observed. This re-evaluation wouldn't happen to coincide with the new tariff structures being implemented next quarter, would it? The Alliance has always supported free trade, the Tellarite insisted, though their secondary appendages twitched in a way that suggested discomfort with the obvious lie. Alex decided to be merciful. Well, the cooperative zone welcomes all partners who commit to transparent and mutually beneficial relationships. Perhaps we should introduce you to Grand Exemplar Vikator. I'm sure he'd be interested in hearing about this. Strategic re-evaluation. The subtle flinch that rippled through the Tellarite's exoskeleton was deeply satisfying. As they guided the Alliance representative toward Vikator, Bennett murmured, "You're enjoying this far too much." Just exercising our Deathworld or diplomatic prerogative to inspire a healthy respect for consequences, Alex replied innocently. Bennett snorted. Is that what we're calling intimidation these days? Hey, they started it with all their terrifying apex predator stereotyping. We're just leaning into the brand. Across the room, Vikator noticed their approach and excused himself from his conversation with a Zoltan dignitary. The Grand Exemplar's imposing presence caused the Tellarite representative to visibly stiffen as they were introduced. The Central Alliance extends congratulations on the success of the cooperative zone. The Tellarite repeated their prepared statement, appendages twitching nervously. Vikator's golden eyes regarded them with predatory assessment. An unexpected but welcome change in position. The Dominion appreciates adaptability in potential allies. The Alliance has always valued stability in the region, the Tellarite insisted. Of course, Alex interjected smoothly. Just as the cooperative zone values honesty in its trading partners. The message was clear. We know exactly what you tried to do, we haven't forgotten, and while we're willing to move forward, don't think for a moment we'll let it happen again. To the Tellarites' credit, they recognized the subtext immediately. The Alliance acknowledges that initial concerns about the partnership were misplaced. We look forward to establishing a more productive relationship moving forward. As do we, Bennett replied diplomatically. The next Trade Council convenes in 2 standard weeks. The Alliance is welcome to send representatives to discuss potential inclusion in the expanded preference agreements. The conversation continued in this vein, polite, professional, and underlaid with the unspoken understanding that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. When the Tellarite eventually moved on to speak with other delegations, Alex turned to Vacator with a grin. Well, that was satisfying. Indeed, the Grand Exemplar agreed. The Central Alliance overestimated their importance and underestimated our resolve. A common tactical error. And now they're scrambling to get back in our good graces before the new tariff structure locks them out of preferential trading status, Bennett added. I'd call that a diplomatic victory. Victor made his rattling laugh. On Vicatoria, we would call it watching prey realize it is surrounded. On Earth, we'd say, they've seen which way the wind is blowing, Alex offered. Your species' obsession with atmospheric movement remains puzzling, Vicator noted, but the concept translates. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, signaling the commencement of the formal ceremony. The 3 made their way to the central dais, where they were joined by Sub-Commander Drex and several other key figures in the cooperative administration. As Zilthrax began the ceremonial proceedings, Alex found himself reflecting on the improbable journey of the past year. What had begun as a desperate diplomatic gambit, pretending alliance to expose a conspiracy, had evolved into the most successful interspecies partnership in recent galactic history. And all because everyone had been so terrified of what would happen when Deathworld Titans clashed that they never considered what might happen if those Titans cooperated instead. The galaxy had watched in horror, expecting catastrophe. Instead, they'd witnessed the birth of an unprecedented era of stability, created by the very evolutionary traits they had feared. Strategic thinking, efficient resource allocation, and yes, the implied threat of formidable defensive capabilities if provoked. As Bennett had put it so eloquently during one of their strategy sessions, sometimes the most effective weapon is never having to use one. The Galactic Concord was still adapting to this new reality, a reality where the most feared species had become the architects of peace, rather than the harbingers of conflict. Many still watched nervously, waiting for the other gravitational boot to drop, for the true nature of Deathworlders to emerge. They would be waiting a long time, Alex thought with satisfaction. It turned out that when Deathworld Titans clashed with the galaxy's expectations rather than with each other, everyone benefited. Everyone except those who had bet against them, of course. And really, who in their right mind would bet against species that had evolved on planets actively trying to kill them? Only those who hadn't been paying attention to how they survived in the first place. By being smarter, more adaptable, and, when necessary, more cooperative than anything their worlds could throw at them. The galaxy had watched in horror. Now it was watching in awe. And that, Alex decided as he took his place for the ceremony, was the most satisfying plot twist of all. The end.